A relationship is actually just a bond shared between two individuals or more, obviously.
You are with people who will not be the same as next bunch of people you meet in your life, right? So you need to create and make your own rules. If there are no changes in your life, or if you don't feel uncomfortable in your life, it actually means that you are not actually growing.
Honey, I'm home.
Hello YouTube world, my name is Devesh.
My name is Atulan.
And we are honeys, even though Atulan doesn't like to call us that. Okay, so a lot of you keep sending us DMs and comments about how cute we look, even though we don't agree, because there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. You want to tell them what goes on behind the scenes? Because you love it. Drama.
The drama that he's referring to is actually the reality of what actually goes behind a relationship. And today's video, you might be in a relationship, not in a relationship, but you can generally apply all this to your daily life, for yourself or for your relationships, not just in a romantic sense, but also with anyone and everyone around you.
Yeah,
so
it can be your family, friends, cousins, exes. There's always something to learn from them.
So maybe this helps you out in some way. We are just gonna throw it out there.
So we're gonna talk about 5 points, and these are not like points that you have to do to ace a relationship. These are just things that you can do to work on a relationship in general. We're not experts, we're not life coaches. This is just our personal experience. So let's go. Your favorite point, starting with number 1.
The first thing and the most important thing that you must be hearing all the time, which is, you can call it overrated, but it is actually very underrated. It's communication.
So when we speak about communication, it is not just communicating your problems or your requirements to your partner or whoever the other person is. It can mean in general of expressing how you're feeling in that moment, trying to make the other person feel what you're feeling. As overrated as it is, you have to be as descriptive. You really have to make the other person feel what you're feeling, because you're always on different paths.
Now, as a person, you might be an introvert who really finds it's very difficult to really express yourself, but there can be different ways in which you can do this. Like, I know as a person, when I was growing up, I was very introverted. I did not share my feelings with anyone around me. Later, at this stage of my life, I'm realizing that it has made me into a person who sometimes reacts to a situation maybe with anger or like things which come out in a very mean way. It's because I did not properly know how to communicate them before. But that is something I am working every day to change about myself. Communication, the best way to think about it is that you are trying to create or personify your problem to the other person, so that they can maybe put themselves in your shoes and see that situation and understand it while communicating if the situation gets heated up, right? Like, there has been so many situations in the past with us where we have been in a fight, let's say, and things do not come out in a very proper way. So in that kind of a situation, it's very, very important that you really learn how to control your emotions and make sure that whatever words you're speaking are not coming out of a point of anger or any kind of negative emotion like guilt or fear. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I think like Atulan's saying about, like, this is perfectly how he put forward what really communication is, because my idea of communication was actually quite shallow in the start of our relationship, because when Atulan was there, he was a lot more of a deep thinker, and when I saw communication the way he does, it changed my world. It was tough, because I thought that a lot of things, when not said, are not required, and when they're just in your head, you're thinking of it, and then something else comes out. Instead, just be very honest about what's in your head, because as soon as you do that, you're kind of guiding a path to your partner of what's going on in your head. A lot of the times communication might fail, which is quite okay, because the time for that conversation is not right.
To better understand this point, we were actually going through a YouTube video which really resonated with us, which we will link down in the description below. There are 4 points that they talk about which really brings out the meaning of communication. Number 1 being, be curious, not critical. So when you are having a conversation with someone, always try to have an open perspective to what they're saying, which their point might not or sometimes will not align with what you think is correct, but always be curious and not always critical.
So the second point says be careful, not crushing, which adds on to the first point. Every time you put in an argument in any way to oppose or side the conversation that you're having, try and not use words and phrases which might crush the other person's opinions. Rather be very careful and mindful for the part that they're coming from a different background altogether.
The next being ask, don't assume. So having a conversation, for example, if I give an example of us in the beginning of our relationship, like I would always assume him to be a silly teenager, which he was. But I would also...
So you would ask me, am I a silly teenager?
No, I would never ask. I would always assume that whatever he did would come out of that image. So I would never actually ask him questions as to why are you doing this? Like, why is it happening?
In my defense, I was 16.
I'm not disagreeing to that, it's fine.
And last point, but quite important again, it is connect before you correct. Again, when you're putting in an argument, before you try to put in your point, try to let them know that you understood the argument that they put forward, and then say what in your head is not making sense about it or what you want to correct about it. So first you connect with the other person and then correct as to what you think is right. Which brings us to our second point, which is healthy boundaries and personal time.
Healthy boundaries basically mean that you have communicated your limits to any situation or any kind of things that you like, don't like already to the person. Could be your partner, could be your family member, could be your friends. Once you have done that, the point where you cannot actually communicate later on would actually not arise. It really helps you to kind of, it's kind of like a map that you've already laid out. Like, listen, I am this kind of a person. Like at this point of my life, this is what I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I like. So they are also aware that beyond that point, if you are trying to push a person, they can actually break and it could be uncomfortable for that person to be around that kind of a situation. For example, let's say, let's not say I was that person who did not, and I'm still not that person who likes to go out that very often. Like, I'm not as adventurous as he is. So I like my own time, own space at home, and I'm really not that outgoing. So I have already set that boundary that you might go out every night if you like, or every day to do something or the other. But for me, I can only maybe do it twice or thrice a week, because as a person, that's who I am, and that's what makes me feel more comfortable with myself, and for me to be the best version of myself around people. So that is kind of a boundary that I have set for myself in this relationship. Similar way that he has his own boundaries which he has set, and it helps us to just navigate our day a little better, where if one person is saying no for something, we are already aware that, okay, this is coming from this point, or like we've already talked about it, we know how this makes him feel, so it doesn't create a clash between us.
Coming to the other half of that point, which is personal time. And obviously we're not 24/7 together. Even though in the lockdown we had to be together 24/7, that made us realize quite many things, to be very honest. But yeah, it did make us realize that even if we were locked inside this one house, we did require some personal time, whether it's on the porch or whether it's me being on the sofa, him being on the bed. Just in general, you know, that's the smallest example. But now that obviously the lockdown stuff has opened up, there is yet things that I do alone, that I do for myself, and there are yet a lot of things that he does to work on himself. Not just mentally, but for fun in general, just to drive ourselves.
So just to get a bit more into what he's talking about, the lockdown phase, I was actually living with him in his house for 4 months, and that was like the initial period of our relationship, and I did not know much about, we did not know much about each other back then, but it definitely was like we always say this, a crash course for a relationship. And it was actually a very good way to understand all these points, because and in that phase we realized how important it is for you to take your own time, even though in a relationship.
So the third point is actually goals, which is personal and as a couple. By the end of it, you need to realize that a relationship is actually just a bond shared between two individuals or more, obviously. But yeah, so you're coming from two different spaces, and when opinions clash, obviously there are things that don't work out. But at the end of it, your goals should be set in a way that these are my goals that I keep for myself.
For couples, it's always important to have a common goal that you're working towards.
Correct. So when we come to working on goals as a couple, I don't think there's an explanation to it, but we can just give you an example of the part that I have certain goals for myself, whether it might be career-wise, whether it might be personal-wise. Yeah, but as a couple, when it comes together, we also have goals that we want to reach in terms of our future, right? For example, content creation, right? Yeah, we work on ourselves moving in. That can be another personal goals, but as a couple. Because by the end of it, I know that I have to take another person along with me through this journey. So it's not just my efforts, both efforts count through.
Changes are always constant, and it's going to be a very constant part of your life, because if there are no changes in your life, or if you don't feel uncomfortable in your life at different points, it actually means that you are not actually growing. In a relationship, when changes happen, it's two different individuals coming together, so there has to be a point of compromise.
Compromises are quite constant in a relationship, because by the end of it, like we said in the earlier point, goals are quite different when it comes to individuals. And obviously you don't let go of your goals to help your partner pursue them, but there are compromises in a certain way to help your partner through that journey. So you need to come together as a couple to find what works for both of you, and then lead a path on your own. Because by the end of it, when you come into a relationship, you need to understand that both personalities are coming together, right? Obviously there are clashes, but you have to find your own ways of making your way through it. Yes, so while we're talking about setting off on your journey as a couple, as anybody, as a relationship in general, you need to know that your journey is special and unique in its own way, and while you're sitting behind this camera, you need to know that you make your own rules.
Every individual in this planet will be different. You are with people who will not be the same as, let's say, the next bunch of people you meet in your life, right? So you need to create and make your own rules. It doesn't have to be a relationship again. In your home, wherever you are, just make your own rules, know what works in your relationship, and keep making changes wherever it's required.
Yeah, can I just interfere there? Don't be scared of people judging your path, because you're making your own rules, and that might not set in with somebody else's morals as such. Whether it's sexually, whether it is ambition-wise, whether it is personal-wise, whether it's how you work on yourself as a couple with regards to mental health, anything in general, right? It's your own rules. If it works for you, you don't have to explain someone or give a reason to that.
We hope this little effort of us, of whatever we have learned through our journey, could just bring about a few changes in your life, maybe in a positive way. So we hope that we could give you something that you could really take and work on, as Divesh said, for the bigger and the larger picture. For the next time when we are here, we thought we would give you the option to choose what you would like to see from us next. So the first option is
me trying to understand Bengali and communicate in it,
or a little more about our careers and what we do in general. So let us know in the comments below what you want to see from us. Till then,
bye!
Auf Wiedersehen!
Tata!
फिर मिलेंगे
चलते चलते
तुझे तो कभी नहीं